Welcome back, guys. So in this video we will not be going in depth because we have seen how to execute the queries previously. We have seen which types of queries can we execute. Basically, whatever queries you have in SQL, you can execute that in these examples using Python and MySQL. So these were some of the most common commands that we use in SQL on a daily basis if we are working on a daily basis with Python or with SQL particularly. So now the focus should be on importing this database which we have created into our system. Into which system? The environment in which we are working for machine learning. So suppose I am working in an environment that is Jupyter Notebooks, as you are seeing on my laptop, and if I have to use this database into my environment, I have to bring it into the environment. I have to read the data into the environment. Since the data previously read using select statements, and the results that were returned to us cannot be used in a very efficient manner if we are using pandas to read the data. We can convert the data returned by fetch all into a data frame. All we have to do is give this statements, give this return result to the data frame object, or maybe some other way. I don't have any idea right now about that, but the thing is that pandas gives us the function. Pandas gives us the method to read the SQL queries and then convert the result by itself into a data frame. That is more convenient than retrieving this data in a separate way and then converting this data into the data frame. So what pandas does, pandas gives us a method to convert, to retrieve the data from a database and convert that into the pandas data frame. So in this lecture we will be seeing that concept. How can we bring the data stored in a database and use only just to bring it in our environment? We will be seeing this because we have seen how can we get the data from the database using select statement. How can we insert the data? How can we update the data? How can we delete the data? Now there are other SQL queries which are not that frequently used, like say alter the tables, and some joins are used there, and you are familiar with all those SQL queries, because if you are not familiar with all those SQL queries, you should get familiar with them because they form the backbone. If you are working with the databases, you must have at least the basic concepts of all those queries that are present there. Okay, so now the focus should be on, this time we are ready to focus on the problem, that is to bring the database into our environment in a data frame form so that we can further process that data and train our machine learning model on that. Since this is all about SQL and Python, we will not be going into training and other. We will just get the data from the database and then place the database in the data frame, and that is all we are going to do in this video, and that is all we need to do, because if we want to train the model, if we want to do further processing, we should first have an understanding of how to get the data from the database into our system, into our environment. So let us do that. So first of all, what we need to do, all of us know how we executed the queries in previous lectures. What we did, we wrote a query, and then what we did, we just executed that query using the cursor object. That is all we did. So what we did, we did cursor, I don't remember, is it cur, yeah, it's cur, cursor, which is short form cursor dot execute query. That is all we were doing. Now as we will execute this, the results have been fetched into our into this cur object. in this cur object. Now the thing is that how can we print those results? We saw how can we print those results. We can either do directly, or we can say fetch all and then get the result from that. Now if we want to get this data into our data frame, pandas data frame, we have a method that pandas gives us, that is read SQL, means read SQL query. So what we need to give input to this method is, first we need to give the query, that is select statement, and then we need to give the connection object that we firstly created when we started the database course. The first line that we wrote, about connecting the database, where we give the these credentials, where we gave the host and etc., that variable, that object, we need to give it to the read SQL, because it needs to know which database it's retrieving data from. So what we can do is we can say, if we want to that, so first of all we will need to import the pandas library. After importing the pandas library, it gives us, now we have the option of reading SQL method, using that method into our environment. So what we have to do now is to say, suppose we will create a data object, data variable, or say data set variable, and then what we need to do is say pd dot read underscore SQL, and then this is the thing is that we need to give it now query and con. These are the only things we need to give, and if we execute this line of code, the data set, the data that is in our database, has been retrieved into our data set, has been retrieved into our environment, and now stored in the data set. So now if we do dataset.head, we can see that the data is present. So we have ID, we have name, and we have address. So this is the data that was present in the database, now is available in our environment. We can do all kinds of stuff that we usually do on the CSV kind of a data. We can do every processing, and train the data, train our models on this data. We can split this data into X and Y. We can convert them into NumPy arrays. We can convert these categorical values in, say, one hot encoding, using one hot encoding, or say label encoder. We can do everything that we usually do in machine learning with this kind of data, because we have, if we see now what is the type of data, what is the type of this data set, so we will see that it will be data frame. So now, since see, it's pandas.core.frame.dataframe, it is the this type of the data frame. So in this way we retrieve the data from the database, bring it into an environment in the form of a data frame. The only thing is that we need to use the method read SQL instead of read CSV, or instead of read XLS methods. The thing is that the query is very important. The query which you give in this variable is very important. Since I have previously, in the previous cell, I have defined this query as select all from customers, so that query is being used, so it's retrieving everything from the customers table. Now if I say select all from customers via some condition, then only that data will be retrieved from the database, and only that data will be converted to the data frame, and only that data we will be able to use in our machine learning model, or say in our data processing, or say in other things which we will do after this step. So these were the things that were very important while dealing with SQL and Python, and how can we retrieve the data from database and get that data into this environment in the form of a data frame. Now the thing is that the other queries that are present in SQL, they can be processed in the same way which we used for the previous queries. So the only thing is that we need to write the query without any error. And then we need to pass that query to the cur.execute method. That is the execute method of cursor object. And when we give that query to this method, the query gets executed. This is the one thing. Second thing is that if we have variables, if we have format specifiers in our query, those format specifiers will be replaced by the preceding tuple you give. So you can directly give tuple. Say you can give cursor.execute query and then give the tuple, or you can give a list of tuples. They will be executed, inserted in the database. The only condition is that for inserting many of the elements, you need to use the insert many. That is the only condition you need to have in mind while inserting many values in this. So thus we saw how we can write the queries, simple queries, and how we can execute those queries. So whether the query be simple or the complex or most complex query, all the queries can be executed in the same way. So you should remember the framework while working with SQL and Python. The framework is this here. You have to write a query, you have to write the you have to execute the execute method, you have to execute the execute method of the cursor object, and passing the query and values whichever you have to this cursor objects method execute. And there is another thing. If you want to update, if you want to make a change in our data set, in our database, that change needs to be there. So like say insert, update, altering, you must always know and keep in mind that you have to comment at the end of the query. Whenever you make a change, comment the change. That is the first important thing while updating the database, while making any change that needs to be permanent in the database. And these are all the points that are very important while working with SQL and Python. And so in this way we perform operations, we perform SQL queries with Python. I hope you understand the concepts I was trying to make you understand. I hope you got the basic idea of these queries, basic idea of executing queries, SQL queries within Python, with Python. And I hope you understand how we can retrieve data from the database and get this data into the data frame object, data frame. So that was all that there is to understand about these things, because first thing of learning is to have the basics clear. If you have basics clear, then the advanced stuff is all easy. So I hope I was able to clear your basics about regarding this SQL, MySQL, and regarding the Python and their working together. That was all in this series, in this series of videos, in this series of lectures, in this series of short videos. I hope you like it videos, you understand the videos, and if you like, understand, and if I was able to help you in some way, please do share this video, like this video, and do subscribe to the channel, because that means a lot. Because whenever you see subscribers growing, you get encouraged to share what you know. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Enjoy.